don't want to give them all a blanket admission right now.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to wait just a couple of minutes for everyone to start filtering in. Thank you for waiting an additional extra minute. Professor Nemechek and I were just catching up. For those of you who might not know, my name is JD Nichols. I am an Assistant Dean of Admission here at William & Mary and actually a 2019 grad of William & Mary myself. And Professor Nemechek taught my senior seminar on U.S. Supreme Court and criminal justice policies. So we had lots to catch up on and just wanted to touch base for a second. But thank you all so much for tuning in today. You are obviously here at the pre-law at William & Mary session as part of our digital DFAS, or digital days for admitted students, sorry, as we refer to it, digital DFAS. I am so excited that you're all here to learn about this program as it is near and dear to my own heart, as I mentioned. But with that being said, I'll go and pass it off to Professor Nemechek to introduce herself.
Okay, well, part of my delight at doing this evening was getting to see JD for the first time in a while. So, so it's always good to see my old students. But thank you very much for coming this evening. And I would like to try to keep this pretty informal. So I think, JD, are you going to handle questions in the Q&A, or is there a chat enabled, or how does it work?
Yeah, so they can use the chat and they can also use the Q&A. I'll be here to kind of maybe pass along questions to you if they're important. If they're anything that I can answer with a link, I can also just go ahead and answer them in the chat directly as well.
That sounds terrific. And JD, feel free to interrupt if there's something, if I'm yapping on and somebody's got a question, just, you know how to stop me. So,
absolutely, sounds good.
Please do, and then I'm happy to answer questions as we go through the presentation. I'm going to keep it fairly short. How much total time do we have, JD?
So it's scheduled for an hour. I'm sure the students wouldn't mind if you went over, but formally scheduled for an hour.
Well, I'll try and leave the largest chunk of time for questions and answers, and I'm happy to do that. So,
sure.
So I just want to talk a little bit about sort of what being pre-law at William & Mary is and what it is not. So one thing that it is not a major. So lots of students come to William & Mary thinking about law school. Some students end up taking that path and others don't. And my job, as I see it, as pre-law advisor, is not to make sure you go down that path. It's to help you figure out if that's the right one for you. So there are lots of things that you can do that are law related, but aren't actually, don't require law school. And there are other things that do. So I'm here to help you with that. I realized as I sort of jumped into action here, I should introduce myself a little bit and tell you a little bit about who I am. So I'm Chris Nemechek. I'm a professor in the government department. I have been at William & Mary now for more than 15 years, which is kind of shocking. And yet they've just gone by so quickly. I study American politics, but I focus on the courts. So I'm primarily a judicial politics person, and I teach courses I teach an intro to American politics from time to time, and then I also teach the courts related courses, so in the government department. There's nothing magical. I mean, there's lots magical about being a government major, but there's nothing magical about having me be in the government department. Because I teach about these things, I am the college's pre-law advisor, but there's nothing magical. There's no connection necessarily between gov and pre-law advising or going to law school. So one of the things that I get questions about a lot of time is about majors, and there is no one major that is the major for law schools. And there's not really even, so normally I tell students that and then they say, yeah, but which one should I do? And there really is not a single answer to that question. What I've got on the slide that you're looking at right now is what law schools want to see their students prepared to do as they enter law school. They want to make sure that you've had some experience with analysis and problem solving, honing your logical reasoning skills. So not thinking only about outcomes, but why we get the outcomes we get, how those outcomes might impact people and or institutions, and then a variety of skills, particularly communication skills. And here we're talking both writing skills as well as oral communication skills and research. And basically, if you look at any major at William and Mary, you are going to learn and have the opportunity to hone these skills. So when I say that there's no one major that is preferred, I really do mean that. The American Bar Association does not recommend any particular major, and law schools, I consistently ask the questions about this with law school admissions people, and they don't have a recommendation. So what I advise students, and this seems in some ways too good to be true, and particularly for those of you who might be thinking about medical school and law school, two extremely different approaches in terms of preparation, where medical school is very, very scripted in terms of the requirements you have to fulfill. What you really, sort of the advice for law school is to take classes you enjoy, try to do as well as you can in those classes, and then sort of put your best foot forward in the application process. Law schools want to have a diverse set of students in their classes. That makes for the best discussions, that makes for some really good opportunities for students to collaborate. It's really what drives the law school application process. They're trying to get a variety of different people in those classes. And so there's not really a way to game that. You don't know what the other applicants are going to look like that you apply. So the best thing you can really do is, take a variety of classes. It's your time to sort of experience the liberal arts education that William and Mary is so well known for, to take a variety of courses, work on these skills, and then apply to law school with the record you've compiled in the classroom, but also the opportunities you've had on campus to participate both in the classroom and outside the classroom. And we'll talk a little bit about extracurriculars. I'm going to apologize in advance, as my right before this talk kind of came in very quickly from another appointment, and my dog is no doubt going to cause a few problems. So I'm going to just say I'm sorry. It's one of the wonders of Zoom that we get to have some of his action as well. Hopefully he'll settle down.
I'm sure they have a few teachers themselves with dogs who make noise in the background as well at this point. So
there you go. Well, if you could hear something tapping at a bowl just now, that's what that was. Someone would like his dinner and he's going to have to wait. So, all right. So I want to talk to you a little bit, sort of having that caveat of sort of what exactly law schools want and what kinds of things our students might engage in terms of majors and that sort of thing, just different opportunities. I want to talk specifically about some different types of programs that William Mary offers that students are oftentimes very interested in if they are interested in law school. And the pictures that are going to accompany this are actually pictures. I had easy access to pictures of me with my students, so that's what you're going to get. But these could be any courses on campus.
Before you jump into this, we got a good question that I think is a little bit related to what you were just talking about.
Oh, absolutely.
Throw out there. So does your major need to match the type of lawyer you want to be? For example, should someone who wants to be a patent lawyer pursue a degree in engineering?
Very good question. So there are some areas of the law that are that do require or at least benefit from certain kinds of coursework. But I would not, particularly at this point when you're starting college, I would not pigeonhole yourself to that extent. There are no doubt different types of law with which you're completely unfamiliar at this point. And what I would say is wait and sort of see what it is that you're interested in. Many people go to law school, so even graduating from college, go on to law school and think they know what kind of law they want to practice, and then go to law school and find out that there's an entirely different way to utilize their degrees that they did not know about. And so, so what I would say is that truly the sort of safest, and I think best bet in terms of developing these skills and so forth that I mentioned previously is really to take a wide variety of courses and sort of get a chance to use those skills across the liberal arts and get some experience, maybe even taking some classes, you know, in fields that you didn't have the opportunity to explore when you were in high school. I don't know about you, JD, but when I was in high school, there was no archaeology class for me to take. You know, anthropology was not something that was offered. I think it's offered more frequently now, not back in the dark ages when I went to high school. But, you know, there were courses that I just didn't really know about. And what I would just strongly encourage you to do is to think about sort of your path through the liberal arts and arts and sciences at William & Mary as an opportunity to explore those kinds of classes. So if you decide, actually one of the things I'm going to talk about here is our relationship with the law school. If you are absolutely positive that patent law is what you're going to do, and you have lots of information that you use to help make that choice, one of the nice things about William & Mary is the relationship between our undergraduate institution and the law school. There is not a formal relationship in terms of admissions. So what I'm talking about here is the willingness of law professors to work with our students, to involve students in projects at the law school, to pair some of our undergraduate students and law students in some mentoring opportunities. We've run several of those in the past, and if you're deciding, okay, I think one particular type of law is really what I want to do, you'll have the opportunity to connect with people at the law school, even if you don't want to go to William & Mary Law School, but you'll have the opportunity to connect with them and learn more about it and learn more about what you need to do. And I help facilitate those connections all the time. I should mention one other person, and she's actually in this photo. Can you all see my mouse when I move it? JD, they can see that? Moving it a little too much there. We're not going to go back that far. But this person right here is named Hannah Gordy, and she is actually, she helps me with pre-law advising. And I always have a former William & Mary undergraduate student who is now at William & Mary Law School who helps me with pre-law advising. Hannah actually in this photo, this was her senior year, but she's now finishing up her time at William & Mary Law School, and she also facilitates connections between undergraduates and law students. So if you want to sit in on a particular class, Hannah can help you do that. And like I said, there's all sorts of different opportunities. So I think that answers that one question. Do we have any more right now, JD? Or
Nope, I think you can go ahead and jump back into it.
Okay. So in terms of the other kinds of programming that we offer, certainly one-on-one advising is always an option. So I hold office hours twice a week. My pre-law advising assistant does I think Hannah's doing once a week right now, but multiple hours once a week, and we're both available by appointment. And so if you have questions or concerns, you can sit right down with us and ask your questions, and we'll help you figure out whatever it is you need to figure out. We also do large events sort of with anyone who's interested in law school a couple times a semester, so that we can help guide students beginning to think about applying to law school, thinking about taking the law school admission test, and just other sort of general questions, as well as organizing alumni events. So we'll bring in William & Mary alums who are working in the legal field. I just did one of those. Actually, it wasn't William & Mary alums, but it was folks who were affiliated. One of them was an alumni. One of them was our board of visitors. And then we had the dean of the law school of William & Mary's Law School speak with our students last week. And those are just opportunities for our students to make connections with those folks, ask questions, and so forth. So there's lots of opportunity to talk one-on-one with people. I mentioned mentoring. So we have in the past run programs where students have gotten mentoring from current law students. There are also opportunities to get mentoring not only from the pre-law advisors, but also in the Career Center. So the career services, the Cohen Career Center, will also help students find internship opportunities and so forth, and can help mentor those students in terms of, you know, what resumes should look like, what kinds of questions they might think about in interviews, what kinds of positions they might think about doing over the course of a summer or a break as well. In terms of the courses, well, I said that there is no required major, and I'm going to stick to that. There are, however, lots of law-related courses that are part of the undergraduate curriculum and that you can take. So JD mentioned a class that he and I were in together, and that was a senior seminar in the government department on sort of the politics of criminal justice reform and criminal justice policy with the courts. And so there are some sort of topics related courses, but there are also a couple standard in the government department. They're sort of 300 level courses, which is sort of something you would take maybe as a sophomore, junior, senior, where we teach essentially a mini sort of constitutional law course. We also have an American legal process course. There are business law courses that are taught through the business school. There are courses on law and ethics that are taught through philosophy. There are economics courses that are law and economics taught through the economics department. And then there's also the opportunity to take law school courses as electives late in your undergraduate career. So I wouldn't advise doing that until probably your senior year. But if you were interested in taking a law course for your own benefit as an undergraduate, so these typically law schools do not transfer credits the way that undergraduate institutions might. So it's not that you're taking courses to sort of get ahead of the game in law school, but you're able to take law related courses that count toward your elective credits as an undergraduate. And many of the law schools, particularly second and third year courses, tend to be structured pretty similarly to our seminars. So, so students oftentimes will enroll in those courses and really have enjoyed them, and oftentimes then have a connection with a law professor for letters of recommendation and those kinds of things, but also just really get a lot out of the experience of being able to get some insight into what law school is like before making the decision to go. So one aspect or one type of opportunity that I haven't mentioned yet is our Washington, D.C. program. So the photo that you see here is actually taken when I had a group of students up in Washington, D.C. for this was a semester break program where basically we were looking at, in this particular class, we were looking at the politics of capital punishment, which would be an interesting class to be taking in Virginia right now, given recent changes in death penalty law, but here in the state of Virginia. But this was an opportunity that students had basically to begin taking classes on campus that then continued up in DC over, this was over spring break, and then wrapped up back on campus after spring break. But we spent basically the week of spring break up in DC, getting to engage with people from involved in all aspects of capital jurisprudence. So we spoke with lawyers who were prosecutors. We spoke with defense attorneys. We spoke with folks who had spent time on death row and were exonerated. That is my dog banging his bowl. I'm very sorry. And we met with folks who were interested in affecting legislation as well. And so those kinds of opportunities exist, and I would definitely encourage you to take advantage of them. They can be really, really eye-opening.
Absolutely. I have something to just jump in with. Somebody asked, is the William and Mary Washington, D.C. Center synonymous with a government major? And yeah, so I was just going to say, absolutely not.
Exactly.
We had a Washington Center DD-FAST program last week on April 6th, which I believe has now been posted on the DD-FAST website if you'd like to watch that one.
Great.
However, I just wanted to say that the Washington, D.C. Center program has programs across all majors. So I did not ever take any with Professor Nemechek. However, I did take 2 different seminars in the DC program. One was on leadership and community engagement. One was on urban education. They offer them on news and media and film
arts.
And they try to do a really good job at kind of changing up the subjects and making them interesting for people across different majors and different interests. Even for students interested in law, the major does not you don't even have to choose a law-related program that the DC Center is doing. In my leadership and community engagement meeting, we met with senators and we met with business people and we met with lawyers. And so it was still a great experience to kind of get that exposure and kind of gain those connections and networking opportunities. So just wanted to jump in with that.
Thank you. No, definitely. And I think that's one of the really unique things I think about our Washington program. So I'm really glad you mentioned it, JD. This is not, certainly there are frequent opportunities for government faculty and students to spend time in DC, but the idea was really that this was, an opportunity that should be enjoyed by everyone across the arts and sciences. And we frequently get folks up teaching religion courses, nonprofit courses, like just really interesting things. So again, I'd encourage you even to sort of think about, maybe some opportunities up there that aren't sort of natural fits for you, just to get experience at, seeing sort of ways in which your interests might cross some boundaries. I think JD noting the sort of like the urban education and so forth. I mean, there's all sorts of law and politics that go into to shaping urban education, and that's a really great opportunity too. So. Absolutely. Great. All right, I'm just going to show a few more photos, and I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of where our students go to law school and so forth, and then we can, I'm happy to answer any questions. So these are just a few more photos. Again, because it's ease of me putting together a presentation, they're my students, but could be any students, and they're just highlighting some of the other opportunities. JD, when you were in my class, we didn't get to go to the Supreme Court, did we?
No, we did not.
Yeah, I'm sure you would remember if we had. I don't remember the details. It's very unusual. So I'm sorry, JD, for you to see these photos. But so these are pictures. The 3 here that show groups of students in different places. Those are actually all taken at the Supreme Court. So the one on the basketball court is actually the highest court in the land. It's a basketball court above the Supreme Court. You can't play basketball there while the Supreme Court is having oral arguments, but it is actually used. It's a gym. It's a place that the justices and clerks and other folks who staff the Supreme Court often work out and so forth. They will no longer take people up there. So I'm glad we got in under the wire to see the newly redone. This is actually a renovation. The previous incantation of this was looked even more like your grade school gym. So, and then the other 2 photos at the Supreme Court are just students on the steps. And then you may recognize someone in the photo on your top right. That is Justice Elena Kagan. And we had the opportunity to meet with her after oral arguments when we went up to DC that particular year. That's not as common, but it was a really neat event. And then the pictures on below are actually, that's our students over at the law school. So it's undergraduates and they are taking part. The law school has a moot courtroom that is set up just like an actual courtroom and can be set up. In this case, it was set up as we were basically doing a simulation of Supreme Court oral arguments. So those are undergraduate students who are making oral arguments and undergraduate students who are playing the role there of the justices. These are just a sample of the kinds of things that folks do on campus. Other folks do all sorts of really cool things, but there's lots of ways, again, you can be sort of thinking about a legal career without having a sort of pre-law major, but learning about that in the fields and the different disciplines across the university. Let me give you a little bit of data so that you can think a little bit about how the process works of applying to law schools and how our students typically do and that sort of thing. So I will first preface this by saying that our students do very, very well in the law school application process. We routinely place students at the very best law schools in the country. We routinely place students at incredibly good law schools that may not be top 14 or top 10 law schools, but that are excellent law schools to which our students are happy to go and graduate from. And
we did get a question about which law schools accept the most students from William and Mary.
Oh, that's interesting. So I think that the so this is based partially, right, on what law schools do our students most commonly apply to. Mm-hmm. Right. So law school is interesting. I oftentimes get questions about, well, how likely, what percent of William Mary students get admitted to such and such a school? And unfortunately, figures like that aren't particularly useful because we don't know, different schools have different requirements. And so it could be that a very high percentage of our students get accepted to a school that's lower ranked, and that a very reasonable percentage of our students get accepted to schools that are really, for which they are really sort of in the ballpark in terms of admissions. Part of my job as an advisor is to help our students figure out where they're competitive and to help them put the best application forward. So what I'm going to talk about, I'm happy to answer any questions, but I think a lot of the nitty-gritty depends on what students in a particular year are doing. I'm actually going to show you some data across a number of years, but the schools to which our students apply most frequently are William and Mary and UVA. I would say are two, and we are William and Mary Law School and UVA's University of Virginia's law school. We are one of their two biggest feeder schools. So it tends to be the University of Virginia sends a lot of students to UVA law and to William and Mary's law program, and we do the same. So it's not unusual, actually. In one of the years, I'll show you, to be in double digits in terms of the number of students who are going to William and Mary Law School and or going to the University of Virginia. And certainly, upwards of 20 that are accepted, 20 students. So I'm going to explain a little bit about what this table is here. Basically, what this shows you, this is a snapshot of 1 year, but quite honestly, our average figures and so forth don't change too much year to year. So this is class of 2019, but it includes folks who applied in 2019 for admission, fall of 20, who were also alums. So for example, and the numbers here, 162, that's the total number of William and Mary, either graduating seniors or alumni who were applying to law school in this year. Of them, 132 were admitted to one or more law schools. So the great overwhelming majority of our students are admitted to one or more law schools. And actually, on average, our students are admitted to 3 law schools. So most of our students are applying to somewhere, I think 7 to 8 is actually the average number of law schools. There's nothing magic about that. I think the fewer law schools you can apply to and meet your objectives of going is the better, particularly in terms of paying fees, application fees. But on average, our students get into 3 of the schools they're applying to. What that tells us is that they are doing a good job of applying. They're applying to schools where they're competitive, and they're getting admissions offers from those schools, as I would expect. Our students do quite well in terms of the average LSAT score for William Mary students of 161.5. That is in the low 80 percentile. So our average is about the like I say, 80, it varies a little bit from year to year, but somewhere between 80 and 83 percentile rank in the LSAT. And our average GPA of the students applying to law school, so that's not just the entire class, but those are the students who are applying to law school, is about a 3.4. So just to give you some idea of where we are with the averages. JD, do you have questions right now? Shall I go to the next slide where I'm going to talk about the specific schools our students go to?
I think you can go to the next slide. I think there are a couple questions, but I'll throw them in later.
Okay, sounds good. So this is a very data heavy table here, but this is what I wanted to show you was some of the schools to which we send students. For 2016 and 17, these are just the raw numbers of students who went to each of these programs. So back to the question about where are we sending most students? We are sending most students right here, UVA and William & Mary. But that is because that is also where most of our students are applying, right? The biggest number of applications. And what the numbers in 18 and 19 show, the number in parentheses is the number of our students who are actually admitted. So for William & Mary in 2018, we had, I don't have the raw number of students who applied, but 39 of our students were admitted into William & Mary's Law School. 8 of them actually matriculated. So the numbers here are the number of students who attended that law school. In 18 and 19, I just have the number, I just included the number that were actually accepted just to give you some view in terms of just sort of, like I said, success rates at these programs. What this also shows you, I mean, these are all very good law schools. And then of them, there are also some that are routinely the number, sort of the top 4 law schools. So Columbia, Harvard, Stanford, Yale. University of Virginia is usually in top 10 somewhere. So it's a very, very good program. But those schools are schools to which our students are regularly admitted. Now you might be wondering what's going on. As you can see, it's pretty typical. 2017, we only had 1 student who went to Harvard, but the 4 or 5 number is actually much more typical over time. The Yale numbers are small. The reason for that is that Yale has a very small entering class. So your chances of getting into Yale are, Yale is thought to be number 1, 2, or 3, depending on how you're looking at rankings. And unlike Columbia and Harvard, which have bigger class sizes, bigger entering classes, Yale's is just very small. So, we send students there, but it's typically in fairly small numbers. But all schools are sending people there in small numbers because they just don't have very big classes. That's kind of where I wanted to go in terms of the different sort of taking you from what you're thinking about as an incoming student and majoring up through sort of where our students go to law school and so forth. I'm happy to answer questions, and JD, if you want to take me through those, that's great. And or I'm fine if people want to ask. I don't know if they can with the way the thing is set up here, but.
Yeah, so I don't think that they have the ability to kind of just turn on their camera and ask. But again, right now is definitely the time to kind of, if you have any questions that we haven't asked yet, if there's anything else that you want to know, now's the time to start submitting those questions via the Q&A feature or the chat. I'm happy to kind of relay those to Professor Nemechek. One question was, what region, Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, Midwest, do William & Mary students go to the most for law school? I kind of believe this question answered it, but.
Yeah, it's really, most commonly it's East Coast. I don't know to distinguish between Mid-Atlantic and Northeast and also the Carolinas. I've got a couple of students who are trying to decide between a few programs, and Emory is one of them this year as well. That's a program we send students to pretty regularly. But I think in general, probably the Northeast. I think this is one of the reasons that the Stanford numbers are a little bit lower. Not a little bit, they're lower, is that there are fewer of our students who want to go out west for school. Stanford is an excellent law school, and our students have had very good experiences there. But it's just more common that our best students who get into Stanford, our best students who are getting into these other really competitive schools either haven't applied to Stanford because they don't envision themselves going out to California, and or they end up going to a different school instead. So there's there's no, I want to say this, there's not any particular reason our students need to stay in this area. Typically, if you're talking about law schools like what we have on this list here, these are all very well respected law schools and recognizable, and they are going to have strong alumni networks in a number of cities. So what I oftentimes tell students is one thing to think about with law schools is if you're going to a school that isn't as well known, isn't as prominent, that one thing you want to think about then is geography. And I would say with University of Richmond on this list, University of Richmond has a very, very strong alumni network in the state of Virginia and even in sort of the mid-Atlantic region, but they're going to be a less known commodity if you want to go out and practice law in Seattle after you graduate, right? There will certainly be some U of R alums there, and they will hook you up, I'm sure, with folks they know and get you into their networks, but it just becomes a question of sort of how strong that network is in areas outside, a few hours away and outside that region. But for the most part, if you're going to, most of the schools on this list, I would say those schools are going to have good alumni networks across the United States. One thing you should definitely be thinking about, and I will tell you this again as you're ready to apply to schools, is you should definitely be asking questions about placement. You do not, I think thinking about financing your law school debt before you're making this decision is really important. And so one of the things that you absolutely want to know is, okay, what kind of a job am I going to be able to get after I graduate from this institution? And you want to make sure that the law schools really are out there placing their graduates. Most of the schools our students go to, that's not a concern. And I sometimes will flag schools. If I am concerned about that, I will try and flag those schools for students.
So do you find that students without prior experience in debate or oral argument have more trouble in acclimating to the pre-law demands than those who may have taken those types of classes or clubs in high school?
No, I do not find that they're in more trouble. I think, like I said initially, there are just so many different paths to law school. And we might be thinking at this point of, okay, a lawyer is a person who, goes into court and argues, and I need to have those skills that I might hone in debate or moot court. But there's actually a small percentage of lawyers who spend their days in courtrooms, right? Most lawyers are doing a variety of other things, and communication skills are absolutely important. But the ability to stand up and make legal arguments in front of a judge or a jury is not something that is essential for every lawyer. And so just as there are, all sorts of different majors and opportunities to develop those skills, different kinds of legal practice are going to require and provide opportunities for different kinds of skills. So it's not to say I don't think those are important and that isn't great preparation or a great experience. I think that many students have really wonderful experiences engaging in those activities at William and Mary. But I know lots of students who were never in debate in high school and then joined debate here at William and Mary and did really, really well and found they really enjoyed it. And, if that helps them in law school, that's great. But that wasn't the purpose. That wasn't why they did it necessarily. And I think that's true of most things on campus and different activities you can engage in as a student here.
Yeah, absolutely. So a friend of mine was wondering if you could do pre-law as a joint degree program student.
As a joint degree? Oh, yes. So like if you were doing the
St. Andrews program.
St. Andrews, great. Yes, absolutely. Now, again, the way you become pre-law at William and Mary is by signaling on your interest form once you make your deposit and so forth. During orientation, you can say, hey, these are the areas I'm interested in. There is no formal process to become pre-law at William and Mary. You indicate it on a sheet that you're interested. And then what I will do is you'll hear from me again during orientation. And I will very strongly encourage you to sign up for a pre-law listserv that I run. And that is how I get students information. There's nothing in the application process and there's no declaration form per se to be considered pre-law at William and Mary. And because you can be doing this in any major, you are absolutely able to do a joint degree program, completing whatever major you're going to complete at William and Mary, that is sufficient.
You just answered 2 questions about how do you become a pre-law student. So that
there you go.
Great. We've gotten a couple questions about William and Mary mock trial team and whether or not we have one. We do absolutely have one, and I'm sending a link to their website to the chat right now. I was wondering though, do you have much expertise with the mock trial team? Would you be able to talk about it?
I do not. So
all right, that's all right. I would recommend to the student who's asking to maybe go ahead and check out their webpage. Most of our web pages that are run by these clubs have contact information for you to reach out to them. So if you are looking to kind of get in touch with the mock trial team, I actually just found where their information is on the website to have that contact information. I'm going to send that to the chat right now as well. Jack Wood is their VP of Outreach, and he would be more than happy to receive an email from you about the mock trial.
Jack Wood was in one of my classes last year, so he's a very nice person, and but actually what this highlights, right, is how distinct that is from pre-law. So I mean, I am the pre-law advisor, and I am not involved in that in any way.
Absolutely. So since Norfolk is so close to W&M, is there a close relationship with the JAG Corps?
Oh, interesting. So there is a close relationship with the law school and the JAG Corps. So there are a number of different folks at the law school who were JAG attorneys, and the law school really prides itself on sort of training the citizen lawyer. That's their sort of niche over at the law school, and a number of the faculty, and in fact, I think Dean Spencer, the new dean at the law school, I think that he has experience as a JAG attorney. I know he's in the, I'm not sure which branch of the military it is, but he's in the reserves. And I'm pretty sure he had experience as a JAG attorney. And there's a number of other folks over there who also have similar experience. So yeah, there are definite connections you could make and networking you could do for the JAG programs.
So at the moment, I'm still deciding if I want to pursue the pre-law route or something else. What are some ways that I can try and figure out at William and Mary if this is the right path for me?
So I think that what you want to think about is not whether pre-law is right for you. So I'm gonna try and tweak your question a little bit, I guess. I'm sorry, but I think what you want to think about is just what you are interested in, and that decision about law and having something be law related is really a decision about, do you want to go to law school? So because there's no formal process by which you declare yourself to be pre-law, and because you can be taking absolutely any number of courses and then apply to law school, that's really not a decision you have to make until you want to decide, okay, do I want to go to law school or not? And about half of the applicants to law school today take a few years away from school and work for a few years before going to law school. So not even all students decide sort of while they're in undergrad programs whether they want to continue on and go to law school. It is also, so I'll give you an example. I have a student a year or two ago who thought they wanted to do med school and had taken all the pre-med courses. They major in, I think it was biology was the student's major, and decided at the last minute that what they really wanted was to go to law school. That record was an absolutely great record for going to law school. It is not that you need to major to do pre-med courses to go to law school. That's not true at all. but the skills, again, that law schools want to see are skills that you will learn in your pre-med courses, as well as in your government courses or your sociology courses or your history courses or your art courses. These are all skills that you are learning across the curriculum in arts and sciences while you're at William and Mary. And so so I don't think, I mean, in some ways, this should be a nice response, I guess. You don't have to figure out what path is the right one for you in any early fashion. You will declare a major at some point, but any major can work for law school. And in fact, again, this is not to say you should all go out and become biology or physics majors, but oftentimes, I mean, as I mentioned before, law schools want a diverse class. And when I say diverse, I mean a diverse set of experiences, a diverse set of interests. And one way in which there's diversity is who are these people who are all part of the class, and what were their undergraduate majors? What's their academic background? And so it is absolutely the case that if you do well as a biology student and decide you want to apply to law school, that can actually sort of be a calling card for you, and that law schools will not have, in all likelihood, a lot of other biology majors in their application pool. So it could be a way you stand out. Now, I wouldn't say to do that and to not do as well in your major as you might if you actually majored in something that you prefer and that feels like a better fit to you. But hopefully that helps to sort of highlight why no one major. I'm not going to direct you to one particular major. And there's no way to game that, right? It could be the year you apply, everybody's a biology major in that application pool, and then you don't stand out. Again, unlikely to happen. But I wouldn't reach those decisions. I wouldn't think about those decisions in terms of how does that going to affect my chances at law school. I would instead think about, okay, what's best for me in my academic career, and then think about how that works with law school.
Absolutely. So do you have students enroll in joint Masters in Public Policy and JD programs frequently? And if so, would this require a different type of advising?
Good question. So it does require a slightly different type of advising. I wouldn't say that I have that frequently. And the reason for that is not because there isn't interest in sort of law and policy. There absolutely is. But joint degree programs, so, I mean, obviously, if you're going to do some type of a joint degree, like a master's in public policy and law school, that is going to require additional time and additional resources in terms of taking, basically what most joint degree programs do is they cut off a year of study. So they combine your coursework and your requirements such that you spend, for law school, it's oftentimes you take your first year of law classes, then you take your public policy classes your second year, and then you go back and take your last 2 years of law school. What I think is important to think about as a student is whether or not you need a joint degree to do what you want to do. Most of the time, the answer to that question is no. And so if you don't need it and you don't need to incur more debt, then oftentimes your law degree itself is going to get you what you want. And it may be, conversely, it may be that your public policy degree gets you what you want and you don't need a law degree. But those are things I talk about all the time with students. I'm happy to chat about specifics. But that is, I think, one of the reasons we don't tend to see a ton of those is that it's usually not necessary for what students want to do. Just to give you a little bit of insight, if you do a joint degree program, JD and whatever the other advanced degree is, you have to apply to both institutions separately. So you have to apply to the graduate school that you want to go to and the law school, even if they're at the same institution, which they generally are going to be, hence the joint degree, but you have to apply to both, and you have to get into both separately in order to do that. So, so most of the time, it's just not something that is cost benefit ratio works out.
Absolutely. So what percentage of William and Mary students get scholarships to law school?
Oh, that's a really good question. So I would say, oh gosh, I should, I don't have, so I'm going to say up front, I do not have that data specifically. So student, and the reason for that is because I get data, the data that I've showed you is data that our undergraduates basically indicate they will share with me, with a pre-law advisor, while they're in the process of applying to law school. And there's not a point at which after they apply and get financial offers that they send something to me. So I don't see that. But I will tell you that I mean, right now, this is the season for financial offers, and I'm working with a number of students who have a variety of different kinds of offers. I think a good answer to that question is that most law schools provide some type of aid for many of their students, for a good chunk of their students. So I don't think most students end up paying sticker price. However, that's a process that you go through, and there's also distinctions based on merit or need, right? So if it's need-based aid, there are sources for that are different than the merit process. But you know, we have students who routinely I talked to 3 students last week who have ranging from half rides to full rides at very good schools, and they're trying to decide between them. That is not unusual.
Yeah, absolutely. So do law schools have a specialty in the type of law that they teach?
Good question. Most of them do not. So law school, unlike graduate school, again, a little differentiation here. Law schools tend to be evaluated in terms of sort of what their students are doing, their incoming classes, LSAT scores, and a variety of other factors. But law schools, what they're doing is not teaching you in general, and this is going to seem a little strange, they're not teaching you the law of a particular field. They are going to teach you how to think like a lawyer. And what you actually end up doing is you learn federal law. You don't typically learn state law, because students going to that law school are going to go and practice in a variety of states, right? So there are different bodies of law. Students are actually responsible for learning on their own, and they do that after they finish law school. They end up doing that in terms of when they take the bar exam for the particular states in which they want to be licensed. So what law schools are doing is they're teaching you, particularly during that first year, the first year of law school, all of your classes are scripted, and everyone's taking the same classes. And basically at schools across the United States, that's what's happening, right? So every law student during their first year is going to take a constitutional law class. They're going to take a torts class. They're going to take some type of criminal law class. They're going to take a legal writing class. They're going to take all of these courses. And through those courses, they're really going to learn, they're going to learn federal case law, and they're going to learn sort of how to think like a lawyer. And then during the summer and programs, and to some extent during various clinics that law schools offer now, increasingly law schools are offering more and more of these, they are learning how to practice, or how a particular kind of law works through those experiences. So law school clinics, to a large degree, emerged, and this is, for example, a law school might have one of their professors who is very active in terms of writing about, let's say, immigration law. And that professor also might have a clinic where they're actually taking cases, working with students and taking live cases on immigration issues, or perhaps working on appeals. And what law students are able to do is to work with that faculty member while they're in law school to sort of begin to learn the law in that particular area. So that's the exception to the rule. A big reason law schools are doing that now today is that students were complaining that they left law school without knowing a particular kind of law. And so that has been sort of the law school response to that concern. But this is really a process where you sort of do some on-the-job learning. It's a bit of an apprenticeship in your summer sessions, where you might have externships while you're in law school, where you're working with attorneys and or judges to learn a particular area of the law.
So what would be a good thing to do in your freshman year for going to law school? Start preparing yourself.
So I think that one of the best things you can do is, and I'm going to start to sound like a broken record, and I apologize for that, but it's true. So I'm going to sound like a broken record. The thing to do is really to take a variety of classes to figure out what it is that you like to do. You are all going to take during your first year a course that is going to be a small seminar course on a particular topic, and you're going to be able to really work on your writing skills. And you're going to take, and that's going to be called a Call 150. And that is just a course that every student takes. There's about 15 or 16 students in those courses. And you're going to get to know your faculty member well, and you're going to get to know your fellow students well, and you're really going to make some strides in terms of improving your writing. And then you're going to take a Call 100 course, which is a course that is going to help you build communication skills besides writing, right? So your oral communication skills, maybe also help you figure out how to convey a message that is important to you via a website. It could be a variety of different things, but other types of communication. So that in and of itself might not seem like, oh, I'm doing this to prepare for law school, but that is actually what you need to do to prepare for law school. And the other thing I would encourage that is a little bit more sort of unique, I guess, is that I would encourage you to think about what extracurricular activities you might want to be involved in. So there are tons of different groups on campus. I'm sorry, how annoying is the dog? My dog's whining.
It's pretty good. Okay? You're okay. Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that students oftentimes do, is sort of get involved in a variety of different activities and extracurricular groups, and sort of spread themselves too thin on that. And a better idea is sort of to test out some different opportunities for extracurriculars. And there's always a big fair, basically, where all the groups get together at the beginning of the year and sort of meet with students and tell them about what they do. And what I would do is try to select a couple activities to be involved in, and over the course of your time at William & Mary to really think about taking on a leadership position in one of those groups. So one thing that law schools do want to see is that you have some sort of stick-to-itiveness. That's a made-up word, but they want to see that, and they want to see that you're able to take on some leadership opportunities. And that's going to be harder to do if you are getting involved in lots of different groups your first year. But if you're able to sort of select a few groups that you want to be involved in and stick with those over your time at William & Mary, I think that is also a very positive thing you can be doing to set yourself up for law school, but also, quite frankly, to make your life at William & Mary a really good experience. Oftentimes, I'm sure JD can tell you all sorts about different groups he was involved in and how, the friendships he formed through that and those groups and so forth, they really enrich your experience. So I guess we can think about that as well as it's what you need to be doing for law school.
Absolutely. So we do have about 5 or 6 more questions, but it is 7 p.m. right now.
Okay. How about can we combine a couple of questions? Are any of them similar, JD?
Absolutely. So could you talk about what kind of internships that you've seen students take when they're at William & Mary, and then also what kind of careers maybe William & Mary Law School grads have found as well?
Oh, good. Okay. So in terms of internships, there are law-related internships that some of our students do. I actually just got a post from the law school's career office. They're looking for summer interns in their career office, and their undergraduates, they hire undergraduates to do that kind of work. But there are also, some students engage in research opportunities on campus that might be law related. There are students who go and do internships with state and national government. So we get students who are, again, I tend to see more of those from my government world as opposed to just law school, pre-law stuff. But there are, there's all sorts of overlap there. it's occasionally, I would say, we get some students who are interning in law offices. Law offices are much more likely to take law school, a lot of folks who are in law school for internships over the summer than undergraduate students. But oftentimes nonprofits need people. And so they might be willing to work with undergraduates and get, have an opportunity to do some real research and work with them that law students aren't sort of soaking up. So those are all options there. So the Career Center runs a program where they have a scholarship program basically for summer internships. And so I would encourage everyone to check that programs, or it's a series of programs. It's not a single thing that they do, but also to work with the Career Center in terms of getting exposure to some internship opportunities. And the other thing I would say is once you have a William and Mary email address, I would definitely subscribe to on the Pre-Law Advising webpage, which you can all find. You can just Google Pre-Law Advising on William and Mary's homepage and it will take you right there. I strongly encourage you to sign up for the listserv. You do have to have a William and Mary email address, so you'll need to wait until you have one of those. But once you have that, I oftentimes get postings from folks like the one I just got from the Career Center over at the law school looking for undergraduates. I oftentimes get law related information that way and I pass it on to the students through the listserv. I think that probably answers. I could give more examples, I guess, but a whole variety of different types of internship opportunities. And by the way, you do not have to have experience in a law firm or doing something that is directly sort of legal in terms of your internships to go to law school. Many people are going to go to law school and they will not have had any experience studying or researching the law.
Awesome. I think one final question that I'll ask of you, and then I want to make sure that you get have your night to yourself as well. How does one prepare for the LSAT when it comes time to apply to law school?
That's a great question. So the LSAT is unlike, so I'm guessing lots of folks in our audience have just taken the SAT or the ACT, and you did some studying to make sure you remembered some, of the subject matter content that you were tested on through those exams. The law school admission test is unlike that in that it is an aptitude test, and what it is doing is it is determining your ability to solve logic problems, essentially, in a condensed period of time. So we could all do really well on the LSAT if we were given endless time to complete it and to check over our work, or we could all do quite well. What we can't all do equally well is to excel in answering those questions in a short period of time. So there's no subject matter you need to know or study to take the LSAT, but you do need to practice taking these test questions in timed chunks. And so what I really sort of liken when you're studying for the LSAT, what you're really doing is practicing for the LSAT. And taking more, as many as you can, taking practice tests and understanding why you're getting the questions wrong that you're getting wrong. That's a good way to prepare for the LSAT. Most students, I encourage all pre-law students to get their applications out pretty early in the fall before they want to attend law school. So if you're a graduating senior and you want to go directly to law school, that is the fall of your senior year. I want you to be getting your applications out. That means you need an LSAT score before that time. So the LSAT is now one advantage, I guess, of some developments with the LSAT is it's being offered much more frequently through the online options. And as a result, I think right now there are 6 or 7 times it's being offered this year. And I expect that will continue even after we're doing things in person again. And so I would encourage you to take lots of practice tests and to only take the actual LSAT test the actual law school admission test when you are ready and you already know what you are likely to score on that test because you've taken lots of practice tests. There are courses just like there are for the SAT and ACT. You know, I think it's a personal preference whether you take a course, whether you study on your own. There are lots and lots of test questions, LSAT test questions out there. You certainly don't need to take a course to get access to those. They exist. And by the way, the Law School Admission Council, and this will be my last point, Law School Admission Council actually has, they've partnered with the Khan Academy, K-A-H-N, to offer free LSAT prep materials on their website. And so I would definitely take advantage of those, whether I was doing another program and you know, taking a course type of thing or not. Those resources are available as well.
Well, thank you so much. There's still a couple more questions, but I just, you know, running out of time. So I was wondering if you would feel comfortable sending your email address to the chat for students to maybe send any follow-up questions.
Absolutely. Yep. Happy to. So let's see here.
If you can't easily find the chat, I think I do remember your email address as well. And
you know what? I got it. So, but I'm not sure, JD, that I can send it to, panelists and attendees.
All panelists and attendees, yeah. So
I'm putting it in the chat right now. Just know that my email address, it's CLNEMA. Those are just my first initial, middle initial. People will look at that and see cinema. That won't work. It is CLNEMA. It's just what the college assigned to me. So
there you go. There you go. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. And thank you to Professor Nemechek for guiding us through pre-law at William and Mary. It was wonderful to kind of get to see you again, interact with you, and hear more about our pre-law programming. And I'm sure that our prospective students and admitted students enjoyed it as well.
Thanks. And thanks for doing this, JD. It's great to see your face.
Absolutely. All right. Have a wonderful night, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.